I'm Bo Davidson with your Real America's Voice News headlines. President Trump is calling on the U.S. Senate to initiate what he calls the nuclear option and get rid of the filibuster in order to bypass Democrats and reopen the government. The filibuster is a long-standing tactic in the Senate to give the minority party a check and balance on legislation. Overcoming a filibuster requires 60 votes, but doing away with the practice altogether would allow the majority party to move legislation along a party line vote. In this case, it would allow the Senate's 53 Republicans to reopen the government despite Democrat roadblocks. Meanwhile, Americans who depend on federal food aid assistance through the SNAP program are bracing for the loss of those benefits. Starting tomorrow, food aid will stop as a result of the government shutdown and lack of funding for the program. Meanwhile, Vice President Vance is warning that the ongoing government shutdown is setting the stage for a holiday disaster during the upcoming Thanksgiving travel season. While meeting with the heads of American and United Airlines at the White House Thursday, the vice president emphasizing that 13,000 air traffic controllers and 50,000 Transportation Safety Administration agents are being forced to work without a paycheck. Take a look.
I don't think Americans should be afraid to fly because we've got great airline professionals who are keeping the safest aviation industry in the world afloat, but they're doing it with incredible stress. What I worry more about is that if you have, let's say, a pilot who's now missed 2 paychecks, who's now telling his kids that they can't do things that they'd like to do, who's now worried about feeding his family, maybe that guy doesn't show up to work, maybe he goes and gets a different job. That means greater delays for the American people. I worry about the air traffic controller who now has missed 2 paychecks, who's got to pay his credit card bill or his mortgage, but can't pay both and decides, you know what, this industry is not for me.
Now, while flight delays and cancellations have been negligible so far, airline industry leaders expect that the change in the coming days and weeks. They're also encouraging Senate Democrats to vote of a clean CR in order to reopen the government so that airline workers can get their paychecks and focus on keeping the country's airways safe. Now to news from across the pond, where King Charles has stripped his younger brother, Prince Andrew, of all of his titles and kicked him out of his royal home. Those are your headlines. We return now to the Charlie Kirk program.
The voice of generations is the Charlie Kirk Show.
All right, welcome back to the Charlie Kirk Show. I want to tell you guys really quickly before we bring in the one and only Michael Knowles, who's just been testifying before the Senate subcommittee. It was really important, actually, and very relevant to this show. But first, I'm going to tell you about Hillsdale College, history, economics, the great works of literature. Did you study these things in school? Probably not. But even if you did, it's probably time for a really important refresher course from the one and only Dr. Larry Arnn, who's put out this amazing new 8-lecture course where you're going to learn about 4 novels, 1984, Brave New World, Darkness at Noon, and That Hideous Strength. Even though these novels were written in the 1930s and 40s, they are more relevant today than probably ever before. You're going to learn about what tyrannical governments can do to your country, to human nature. More importantly, they show us that faith, family, and friends and this country are worth fighting for. So maybe you read these books long ago in school. Maybe you heard others talking about them and they seem intimidating. They don't have to be. Let Hillsdale College help you make the most of them. So right now, go to charlieforhillsdale.com to enroll. That's charlieforhillsdale.com, CHARLIE.com, or forhillsdale.com to enroll. Plus, there's like 40 other courses you can take. If this one doesn't strike your fancy, you can find one that does. I guarantee you. Learn, be an autodidact. It's so important. It's what Charlie taught us. All right, without further ado, I'm so excited to bring in Michael Knowles, host of the Michael Knowles Show, and just all around good American, good Catholic American, because that seems to be, I'm going to get into that with you, Michael. Little J.D. Vance dust up about Usha, but we're going to start with the most important. Tell us what you did this week. You went before the U.S. Senate. It was a subcommittee hearing on the rise of political violence. It was hosted and chaired by Senator Eric Schmitt from the great state of Missouri. Tell us what that was all about, Michael.
It was a really important hearing. I was honored to be invited and to go testify. Chairman Schmitt called it, and at as timely a moment as you could imagine. He opened it, by the way, with a beautiful tribute to Charlie, and if people haven't gone to see the testimony, just even that opening, I think was really beautiful. And that was obviously the cause of the testimony, because there's been a lot of political violence and it has been increasing. There was a Pew poll just came out. 85% of Americans think that political violence is getting worse in our country. When 85% of Americans agree on anything, I think you can acknowledge that it's happening. And so he said, all right, obviously this is a longstanding problem that has reached this horrific, tragic climax in Charlie's assassination and in the reaction to Charlie's assassination, and the minimizing and the excusing and the justifying and even the celebrating at all levels of the American left. And so we need to figure out what's really going on here. So I felt it was important to go. The Democrats called their own minority witnesses. What was really disappointing is that half the Democrats on the panel didn't even show up. The ones who did show up asked, I thought, ridiculous questions. You know, they would just bring up January 6th or whatever. They wouldn't even let us answer on the points of January 6th. I think because they know the answers would be devastating to them. And then there was one moment in particular that I thought was really crazy, because one of the guys on this subcommittee is Cory Booker. And Cory Booker has endorsed Jay Jones for Attorney General of Virginia. Jay Jones, who has called for Republicans to be killed, and he's clarified he wasn't joking about that. So Cory Booker shows up late. He uses up all his time just bloviating, saying it's really a both sides issue, but actually secretly it's entirely a right-wing issue. And anyway, we need to be more careful about our words. We need to take back our words when we say things we shouldn't have said. We need to be introspective. The questioning then goes to Senator Blackburn on the other side of the room. I'm listening to her and I say, okay, well, that's a good question, but I want to get back to something Senator Booker said. You know, if he's really serious about this, it seems like he's setting the stage to withdraw his endorsement from Jay Jones. He should do that now. I turn. Booker left the room. There's a Cory Booker-shaped hole in the wall. The whole thing on the Democrat side was completely disingenuous. It was crocodile tears. And the conclusion that I have to reach from that is the Democrats don't want to talk about political violence because, one, it's coming from the left. Even the Atlantic magazine admits it. And two, because their base supports it. And I can't come to any conclusion other than the Democrats in government are more or less fine with the political violence, too.
Well, I fear you're right, Michael. There's a clip here that from Jennifer Welch, who I confess I had no idea who she was until about a week ago. And she apparently has amassed quite a following as a podcaster. She's a former Bravo reality star that became a podcaster. And she says some pretty troubling things that lead me to believe that your conclusions reached after this subcommittee hearing are sadly more likely than not true. Play cut 283.
So listen up, Democratic establishment. You can either jump on board with this or we're coming after you in the same way that we come after MAGA, period. They're that are beholden to the same corporations that helped Donald Trump get elected. Kudos to Bernie, to AOC, to Zoran. And that woman out in somewhere middle America saying, Charlie Kirk, he was a racist, he was a piece of There are so many more of us than there are of them. And these Democrats that continue to play patty cake with corporations, nobody wants that. Nobody wants you.
So, Michael, is she right that the Democrat base does not want to moderate, that they do not want to confront the demons in their own closet and their own activist militant base?
You know the polls as well as I. After Charlie's assassination, YouGov conducted surveys, showed that people who identify as very liberal are 8 times as likely as people who are very conservative to justify political violence. Let's throw that image up. This is 31, image 31, please. And I believe this is the poll you're looking at. And that crazy, we've shown it a number of times on this show, Michael, but this is to me the scariest graph that exists in American politics today, where you have 18 to 39-year-old self-described progressives with that wild standout node, that blue left dot on the screen, where you contrast that with the same age group among conservatives, and they are among the most, if not the most, peaceful of all the cohorts on this survey. Well, this is what's really scary. This is kind of like the second part. So if you just look at all age groups, very liberal, 8 times as likely to justify political violence as very conservative. Then you zoom in on what you're showing, and it breaks it down by young people, middle-aged people, older people. And if you look at the older people, the liberals and the conservatives, basically about the same. Liberals are a little more likely to support political violence, but it's almost the same. Moderates, the least likely of all. When you zoom back to the younger groups, something changes. First of all, the moderates and the conservatives flip. The young conservatives are much less likely than the young moderates to support political violence. They're the least likely of that age group. Then it's moderates, and then the young liberals spike in their support up to 26% for political violence. So not only is this today a major problem on the left, it's getting worse because you're looking at the young people. It's a crystal ball for the future. So I suspect Jennifer Welch is probably right about this. I like you, had never heard of her or never seen her face before that viral clip. However, she's not just some fringe nobody. There are other interviews where she's sat down with Hakeem Jeffries, Democrat leader in the House. In that interview, he lauds her, he praises her, and she says, I've sat down with a bunch of your colleagues too. So, this is not an aberration. I think every single data point we see, the public opinion polls, the statements of the prominent liberals, and all the way down to what we were discussing at the Senate testimony, which is the actual cases of political violence, they're coming from the left. What's so amazing about those data now is that even The Atlantic has to admit, okay, political violence is primarily a left-wing problem, not a right-wing problem today. That's using data sets that don't even count all the left-wing violence. Because if you look at all of these data sets and even the federal numbers, they're not counting the BLM riots that left dozens of people dead and $1 billion in property damage. That doesn't count as left-wing political violence. They're not counting all sorts of attacks on pro-lifers.
Tesla attacks.
The Tesla dealerships. And then the incident that I was called to testify about was a campus event at University of Pittsburgh. 2 Antifa operatives who are card-carrying members of Antifa show up, throw an explosive at cops, seriously injure a female police officer. These are people who were claimed by the Torch Antifa network, Torch Antifa soliciting donations through a tax-exempt nonprofit organization for them. This is as clear ideological violence as you can possibly imagine. That incident was not counted as left-wing political violence. And so the only conclusion you can reach is that the left doesn't commit a lot of political violence when you don't count the political violence the left commits. Interesting how that works. It just seems like, the go-to grab bag option of the American left in 2025 is to just simply, rig the results in your favor. But Michael, you can't argue with this. I believe this is the article you're talking about. Throw up 337. Top Trump officials are moving onto military bases. Stephen Miller, Marco Rubio, Kristi Noem, and others have taken over homes that until recently housed senior military officials. So this is straight from The Atlantic, and it is no longer safe for members of the Trump administration to live out in the general public. They have to be housed in secure military bases for their own safety and for their family safety. This is what it's come to. What's crazy, that's actually not even the article I was referencing. There's another article that says left-wing terrorism is on the rise. That's the headline. I actually hadn't even seen this headline until you just showed it to me. The fact that we have civilians, we have people just working in our government, ordinary political order, who now have to move to secure locations for military leaders. It shows you that something really horrific has happened in this country, as if the Rubicon has been crossed. I suspect that happened when the Democrats started prosecuting Trump, the chief political opponent and the predecessor, when they started raiding his home, when they started going after all of their enemies and even justifying his assassination, which nearly happened in Butler, nearly happened again, actually, later on. It does feel like something just seismically has shifted in the political order, and it's a lot bigger than some one podcaster making nasty comments or I don't know, one Democrat in Congress. It seems like this is a major shift of the whole left. Yeah, it feels like the whole tree has become rotten from the root, and it does feel like there is a seismic shift. It's an ideological movement-wide shift, and you could see it about the way that they talk about President Trump, or they talk about Charlie. Nazi, fascist, bigot, racist, homophobe, xenophobe. All of this language that has basically said, this movement is a bunch of Nazis, and what did we have to do with Hitler? We had to eventually, take him out.
right? And I think that's becoming more widely and widely accepted within the left-wing political movement. Michael Knowles, 10 seconds, then I gotta take a profit timeout.
Just listen to Joe Biden. Get it from the horse's mouth. Is it the horse's mouth? Some part of the horse. When you say that there's an existential threat to the country, as he said about Trump, existential threats are a justification for assassination. I think they knew exactly what they were doing.
Yeah, I'm concerned you're right, Michael. Real quick, I'm going to tell you about the tax extension deadline may have passed. But for millions of Americans, the real trouble is just beginning. If you miss the October 15 deadline or owe back taxes, the IRS is ramping up enforcement. Every day you wait, that's the key here, don't wait. Every day you wait only makes things worse. And here's the harsh reality. The IRS can charge a penalty of 5% per month, up to 25% of your total tax bill, just for not filing. That's in addition to what you already owe. The good news, there's still time for Tax Network USA to help. Self-employed or business owner, if that's you, even if your books are a mess, they've got you covered. Tax Network USA specializes in resolving financial chaos and getting you back on track fast. So call 1-800-958-1000. That's 1-800-958-1000 or visit tnusa.com. That's tnusa.com. We'll be back more with Michael Knowles in just a second.